Welcome to another edition of Shay's Soapbox. This is our new feature here on Kink Candid, where you get little mini episodes here and there that are just me talking about a topic that has caught my ear or my eye. So today I want to talk a little bit about, and this is a bit of a loaded topic, I know, consent. Now, before we go any further, allow me to first state that consent is extremely important in everything that we do in this lifestyle. We are consenting adults. That's everything that we do is predicated on the concept of consenting adults. I consent to the things that I do for him and things that he does to me, and vice versa. He consents to the things that I do for him and the things that he does to me as well. Consent is huge. Non-consent is dangerous, and we all know that. But that's not what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about today is specifically a phrase that I have seen bandied about quite a bit lately, and that is, if you feel your consent was violated, then it was. I take great issue with this phrase, not in a play context, because whether or not your consent was violated in a play context is largely a matter of that is known only by the people who were in the room. So if you say you didn't consent to something, who am I to tell you that you did? And that's between you and your partner. In that circumstance, you two are the only ones who know what happened. And so it's not for any of us to say whether or not your consent was violated. So in that context, the phrase does make sense, I will admit. However, what has come to my attention is the use of the phrase in contexts that are not play. It is the use of the phrase in particular to reference things being done by other people in a setting where you, and this is the more general you, not you specifically, dear listeners, but the person in question is present. This may be a munch or a play party or just in public. And I see it used a lot. This person did this thing and I don't like that thing, and I didn't consent to seeing or witnessing that thing. Therefore, my consent was violated, and the person who did it is a consent violator, and they should be sanctioned or flogged or run out of town on a rail, tarred and feathered, whatever consequence you think is appropriate. And this is where I begin to take issue with it. Consent applies, to my mind, to things that you are either doing or having done to you, things that you are a direct party to. If we go in the bedroom and we play with the violet wand, one of my favorite toys, if we are playing with the violet wand, that requires the consent of both me and him, because he is doing the thing and I am having the thing done to me. Therefore, our consent is relevant to that situation. I have to consent to having it done to me. He has to consent to being the one to do it. So we both consent. Consent is relevant there. However, I have seen that phrase, and in general, the concept of consenting to being exposed to or seeing something that you did not wish to see, thrown about in a lot of very varied contexts. I see it applied to things like this person did this thing in, most recently it was this person did a thing at a social event, a munch, I believe was, at least that's what I'm being told. And I didn't like the thing, and I didn't consent to witnessing this thing, and I confronted the person to tell them that I had not consented to that, and it upset me. And why isn't this being considered a consent violation? Now, I do want to note for the record that in this context, the thing in question, which I will not disclose, it's not my place, but the thing in question did not involve nudity. did not involve even touching. So let's keep that in mind. And the thought that goes through my head is no one was touching you or even anyone else. They weren't violating any public exposure laws. They weren't, nude or something like that. And no one was forcing you to watch. If you don't wish to witness a thing, you have the ability to turn your head, close your eyes, walk out of the room. You have options, and you're not being tied down with toothpicks in your eyelids, forcing you to watch this thing that you don't like. So I don't think it's fair to label the person who did this thing a consent violator, because they didn't violate anyone's consent. The person they were engaging with in the action in question had obviously consented to it. Now, if they did the thing to someone else without their consent, that's an entirely different issue. But it cannot be a consent violation, to my mind, if the people involved directly have both consented. Dom A consents to doing the thing. Sub B consents to having the thing done to them. Person C in the next table, consent is not needed here. And I take this one personally, I will admit. And I have been brewing on this soapbox for a couple of days because I take it personally. Because it has been thrown directly at me and people like me on a regular basis. By which I mean, as I've spoken about openly on the show, I wear a stainless steel collar. It's a flat, plate style, loose fitting for health reasons. But it is stainless steel, has an O-ring in the front. It locks with an internal screw. And this collar does not generally come off of me. It will come off periodically to be cleaned, just so I can wipe down the inside, because that, just for maintenance reasons, that has to happen. It often comes out if I'm doing any kind of cardio exercise. I love Zumba and things like that, and it bounces against my collarbone and has been known to leave bruises if I'm not careful. So often he will allow me to remove it for workouts for that reason. And most recently it was taken off for a couple times for safety reasons. It was taken off once while we were playing with the violet wand, just so we don't hit the metal with electricity. It was taken off when I was in the hospital because I was going to have surgery, and you can't wear metal in an operating room. Apparently you can be burned if you wear metal in the operating room. At least that's what I'm told. I had to take off my wedding ring and my collar. I was very upset about it. But all that to say that generally, about 99% of the time, this collar is locked around my neck. It is equivalent to me, to my wedding ring. It is worn 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just like my wedding ring. And it's just as symbolic and important to me. I have quite point blank been told that my collar is too obvious and that I should not be wearing it in public, you see. That I should morally, I guess, since legally there's no basis for any of this, but morally I'm being told that I should have some kind of quote-unquote day collar that looks more like a necklace or something like that, because other people did not consent to being exposed to me wearing my collar. I have seen it said to other people, not myself directly, but that if one were going to, say, a festival, and one is wearing a skirt, and one wishes to wear one of the tail plugs, that if the tail is visible in any way underneath the skirt, even just the end of it sticking out from beneath your skirt, that this is inappropriate and it is not okay because other people did not consent to being exposed to our sexual life. This brings me to my points here, is that one, my collar is not inherently sexual. Not everything that we do in this lifestyle is inherently sexual. I have an entire episode on that if you're interested. It's not about sex. It's So no, being exposed to my collar is not being exposed to my sex life. My sex life is not anyone else's business and is not exposed to anyone else because it shouldn't be. However, my collar is symbolic of my submission, not my sex life, and therefore an entirely different thing. And no, I do not need, nor will I ask, for any other person's consent to witnessing me wearing my collar. This is the bigger point is that, you know what, as it comes down to it, if no one is actually doing something directly to you, nor are you doing something directly to someone else, nor if you are not directly involved in the action, then your consent is not needed. We don't need your consent to be visible. I don't need your consent to wear my collar. Someone else does not need your consent to wear their tail. Now, if you're wearing it with, say, backless chaps where you can clearly see that it is in fact a plug, then you get into a little bit of a dicey area. There are some things we don't do in public simply because people don't understand them. I don't call him master in public for that reason. People don't understand why I would do that, and it can be very upsetting to people who don't understand the lifestyle. So out of a general sense of respect, I generally refrain from using that particular term, especially because it is loaded in so many circles for so many reasons. I do call him sir occasionally in public because I don't find anything disrespectful about using what is inherently a respectful term. We obviously stay within the bounds of the laws of our jurisdiction. If it is illegal to be nude or topless, then obviously it is a problem if you go out nude or topless. One must always, be careful to obey the laws. But if it is legal to do in public, such as wearing my collar, then no one is forcing you to witness anything. If you are not bound to your chair and no one is holding your eyes open, you have the ability to turn your head or walk out of the room. And because you have the ability to turn and leave the space or line of sight, as the case may be, then I do not feel it's necessary to involve you since it doesn't involve you. I'm not going to involve you by asking for your consent to do something that has nothing to do with you. And I don't feel like we should be asked to. I think consent is hugely important for things that you are doing or having done to you, yes. But we have reached a point as a community where we have decided that it is acceptable to tell people that they need you can't do anything unless you have every person who might catch a glimpse of you's consent. And frankly, I think it's ridiculous. So, you know what? As far as my collar goes, I'm not going to take it off. I don't take it off when I walk out the door, and I'm not going to. And if that offends someone else or they didn't consent to seeing it, then they have the ability to remove themselves from seeing it. And it is not their right or my responsibility to demand that I adjust in that way to needing someone's consent. And it worries me, honestly, for us as a community because consent is so important. And because we stress consent so much in this lifestyle, it's how we differentiate what we do from abuse. A good 80% of what we do on a day-to-day basis, especially us 24/7 folks, a good 80% of what we do on a day-to-day basis would absolutely be considered abuse if we had not consented to it. The differentiating factor is that we have consented. And we stress that. But when we push the issue of consent to meaning I essentially need other people's consent to exist, then we get into a dicey area. I posted about this exact thing a long time ago, actually, over on one of my social media profiles. I spoke about it, and I'm going to pull it up because I think some of my thoughts there would probably be relevant because they were important to me at the time. And It did. It was one of the reasons that we started the show, honestly, is because we were getting so much of this. And it inspired me some time ago to post about this very topic. And the insistent thing for me that kept running through my head is, if I need your consent to wear my collar, if I need your consent to address him with respect, if I need your consent to do any of the number of things that I do that don't involve anyone else, then you are essentially asking me to get consent to exist. And that is, I think, the thing that we're not grasping. We are reaching a point where the divide has become a schism between those of us who live this as a lifestyle and those of us who do it in the bedroom only. And as I always say, either way is absolutely valid if that is what works for you. The problem is the schism has gotten so deep that I feel that sometimes the bedroom only crowd begins to view this as inherently sexual, inherently bedroom activities, and that because many bedroom only submissives do not wear collars 24/7, they only wear them in the bedroom, they only wear them during playtime, and that's fine, absolutely. But because they don't wear them 24/7 and only wear them during play, which is often inherently sexual, they begin to associate the collar with sex. They associate any outward sign of our roles as inherently about sex. And because it's about sex, then we get into these consent issues. And what most of us are doing really has very little to do with sex, at least in the 24/7 side of things. Munchkin and I have said it a number of times where most of what we do has very, very little to do with sex. And even if it does, even if something is arousing or sexually charged, now, as I said, with the exception of actual laws that prohibit things like having sex in public, even if a situation, even if an action is sexually charged or is arousing to the person involved, if it doesn't involve your body, then bluntly, I don't think your consent matters. And I know that's unpopular. I know that it is. But I'm going to hold firm on this one. This is a hill I'm willing to die on. If it's not your body, then I don't really care about your consent. And if you don't like what other people are doing with their bodies, then it is incumbent upon you to decide to turn your head, walk away, do whatever it is that you need to do to remove yourself from this situation that is making you uncomfortable. Think of it in terms of the dress codes that we see in some schools, where they say girls can't wear X, Y, and Z because it's distracting to the boys. Now, a number of people, myself included, have argued that if my tank top is distracting to the boys, then it is the boys' responsibility to decide to control their own eyes, and that my body and what I put on my body are my choice. And we feel that way about things like dress codes. The same needs to apply here. What I do with my body, what I put on my body, is something that really only needs the consent of two people, myself and my dominant partner, who I have chosen to give that power to. And if you don't like it, then I will tell you, just like the boys in school, it's your responsibility. Control your eyes, walk away, turn your head, do whatever you have to do. But I don't need your consent, and I won't ask for it. After your fun, kinky activities, we used to talk about going and having a cigarette. How about you switch to vaping?
Vaping is so much safer and better for you. And for all of your vaping needs, I highly recommend Vapin' Robbies. VAPINROBBIES.com. We're also Vapin' Robbies over on Facebook. Pure, unadulterated vape joy in the form of custom artisanal vape juices in any combination you can possibly think of. Check it out and let us know Kink Candid sent you.